Oh, wow. That is embarrassing. Can you hear me now, chat? Can you hear me now? Oh my God. How horrendous is that? Let me see if that should be working or not. Oh, mate. Amazing. Right. I'm going to have to do all my jokes again. This is horrendous, right? All right. So, guys, thank you for joining us. Thanks for the heads up, Chris Symbol, Josh Hazard. Yeah, that was. I got too excited. You know, the new points come out, and what happens? I'm just too excited. Anyway, let's chat, Tyranids. So, if you don't know me, I'm SwiSSly. I'm from the 6++ team. I'm your budget Val Heffelfinger. I'm you know, your child would say to you, Mum and Dad, I want Val Heffelfinger, and they would say, and you would say, we already have Val Heffelfinger, and you'd point and it would be me, and I would be the lesser version of that. If you don't know Val Heffelfinger, you should go and watch Grim After Dark. It's very good. Very funny channel on the old YouTubes. Cool. So what we're going to go through today, guys, is just like a bit of a holistic view of Tyranids and how I think they're shaping up moving forward. Now, I could sit here to you and say, well, this unit's the best, this unit's the best. I could tier list it up, but I haven't played enough games, neither of you, right, to really understand that. So let's go through a bit of a holistic view of what Tyranids are trying to do and how they're going to win games. What's the strengths? What's the weaknesses? What's the threats? What's the opportunities? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a SWOT analysis. If you don't know what a SWOT analysis is, it's a fantastic tool to review your life, work, relationship, and also Tyranids in the new world of Warhammer 40,000 10th edition. So I'm going to share my screen, add to scene. Let's go. Boom. All right. I'm going to make that bigger so you can see it. Look at that. What a sexy picture that is. Definitely not going to get copyrighted on that. Sweet. So, of course, my big question, my big favor to ask you all is put your questions in the chat. I want to see what people are talking about. What do you like? What do you not like? Is there any surprises in these points? Is there anything you want to hear more about? If you want to have a chat at the end, let's do it. I've got until about 7, in which case afterwards, me and Ed are going to be talking points across all different factions. But I wanted to give you guys a bit of a super tasty Tyranid view first. All right, let's go. So we're going to quickly look at top line SWOT analysis, what I think is the score. And then, guys, we're going to go into like proper slides. Like we've got graphs. We've got, what have we got? We've got like analysis. It's going to be, it's big, guys. It's big. Bugwatch is going big. Let's go. All right. Number 1, let's have a look. SWOT analysis. So this is what I think is happening with regards to Nids, following the points, following all the data sheets we've seen. So in terms of strengths, I think we're amazing at killing chaff, especially with things like Torrent. We've got like Torrent spam, right? We've got lots of units that can do a bit of flaming. If you look at Pyrovors, man, Pyrovors reroll their wounds. Like that's so good. I mean, it's not as good as it is now. Yeah, I had a game last night of 9th edition, and I had a good time into some Wolfen with a squad of Pyrovors. It was very nice. But now, like, you know, we've lost a bit of the AP, but we're still great at killing chaff. And then obviously our melee profiles are really good as well. So we've got things like Hormigans, Gene Stealers, etc. that just have a million attacks and they can just go through stuff. Even Raveners and things like that. So we're great at killing chaff. What else are we good at? Durability. We have wounds for days, all the wounds, and if that wasn't enough, we can actually buff them with invulns. I mean, the probably the worst kind of invuln at a 6+, but it's not bad, right? It's going to stop some things going through. We've got feel no pains that we can hand out. What else we got? We've got the extra armor save from the venom throps. You know, that's really strong stuff, right? We're going to try and keep stuff alive as long as we can. And then the other strength is we've got a million data sheets that do all sorts of different things. So we're going to be really good at scoring all these Tempest of War-esque secondaries. So if you think of, oh, you need to get into this half of the board, or you need to go and do this action, or you need to do that. We've got units that do it. Things like Raveners that can just go off the board and you say, right, well, if I draw that card next turn, Raveners come in, I score points. Wonderful. You've got Gargoyles, which are super fast. You've got Hormigans that are super fast. And of course, because our units are cheap as what as anything. Our units are so cheap, but so much cheaper now. It feels like. You know, we're going to be able to do actions and stuff. Yeah, as Chris Symbol says in the chat here, Biovars are going to be mad. They're going to be so good because they're going to drop Spore Mines, who Spore Mines have a shooting phase. So that means they can do actions, right? So I had a bit of an argument here, or not an argument, a discussion with a Tyrannid aficionado as well. And he was arguing that a Harpy is probably going to be better at this than a Biovar. For me, it depends on what the objectives are or the secondaries are. Not secondaries, but you know what I mean, how you score points. If you can do it with a unit of 1, then a Biovar of 40 points, popping a Spore Mine, whatever you want it, is going to be pretty good. So that's really nice. So overall, as Jack says as well in the chat here, great mission play. I totally agree. I think that's going to be something we really excel at. What are our weaknesses? Okay, this is what people tend to have a bit more chat about. Yeah, Spore Mines for behind enemy lines, just horrendous. Just not what just how the rules writers intended. They were sat there with turns and go, right, we want to give Tyranid players all the points, and we're going to do it by giving them Spore Mines behind enemy lines. Let's go. So weaknesses. We're mediocre in speed compared to 9th, right? Raveners have gone down. A lot of things have gone down in speed, and you're going to see a little bit of a graph that I'm going to show you in a minute, which really highlights this. We also, and of course, that's really important, right? I just want to reiterate the importance of that. The movement phase is the most important phase of the game, in my humblest opinion. And, you know, having that speed is really, really powerful. And losing it is going to suck, but we're not the only ones. You know, you look at Orcs and things like that, they're not as reliable. So I think we're going to see a bit of, we're going to have to play a bit more cleverly. And of course, we're going to have to lean on those units that can still move pretty fast. Then looking at high toughness things, so tanks, monsters, etc. Knights is going to be a rough one, but we struggle to deal with those on our sheets as standard, and I'll show you a little bit about that in a minute. The exception is that we've got hyper aggression, right? So you can, if someone's taken loads of vehicles, you can just drop hyper aggression, and all your 6s auto wound, right? Really good. That's awesome. And it's great that we have that ability. However, it's one thing that we're gambling a lot on, right? We need that to work. And of course, I think they've put that in because it really leans into how they want you to play Tyranids. Swarms of stuff, loads of things. They don't want you to play Crusher or anything like that anymore. They want you to have 1,000,000 Hormagaunts and 1,000,000 Termagants. And that will really lean into that. Of course, you've also got Dev Wounds there. So we do have things that do Dev Wounds. We've got the Broodlord and the Gene Stealer combo, which is just savage. But that is a one and done combo, I think. You know, you really need to kill whatever you hit with that, because then afterwards it's going to definitely die. What we've got in chat. Good thing is that everyone loses speed and AP in the game in general. From Jack, yeah, totally agree. And we'll get onto that as well really soon as well, because a lot of people saying, oh, we don't have many invulns in Tyranids. We don't have you know, we don't feel like as durable. Guys, it's so good. We are durable, trust me. Chris Symbol saying here, I think all 1-eye and 2 carnies will be good against vehicles if we can deliver them. Yeah, so they've got like strength 12, I think, or strength 13, and then old 1-eye strength 14. I'm not so hot on that group, and I may come to regret that, because it does sound really good. It's just if your opponent focuses down that unit, that is gone, and that is a lot of points in the bin. A lot of points, and it's impossible to hide 3 Carnifexes in all 1-eye. You can drop it in as a rapid ingress, but if you're going to do that, you're opening yourself up to be shot. So I'm a bit sus on that one at the moment. Not so sure. It's same with Trigons, right? Trigons sounds amazing. You can just drop in within 3 inches if you want to, or you can just hide it and then it comes out the next turn, and it does slap the Trigon. However, your opponent has an entire turn to shoot it, and that just makes me nervous. I don't like giving my opponent agency personally. Cool. So with that, and oh yes, and then last but not least, now weaknesses. And these again, top lines, first things that are coming out of my head. Range attacks are largely limited to close range and low strength. So there's a few things that are long range. Think of the Exocrine, right? You and I both looked at 135 points and was like, oh, that sounds amazing. But that gun is D6 plus 3 shots, man. How many times are you going to roll a 1 or a 2? It's going to be a lot. It's going to be so many times. And it's going to hurt. And as a result, that unit, I don't want to put it in my list because I can't rely on it to do the job it needs to do, if that makes sense. So it's not in my first draft list, unfortunately, but you never know. I might be proved wrong. So let's look at our opportunities. So as I mentioned before, we've got all these data sheets. We've got all these low points cost units in terms of home against, term against. Finally, they've come down to a price point we can all appreciate. And as a result, you can really take control of the board. You can really get up there, move block your opponent in if you can try and do it in a way that, they can't get past them, if you can position them. And then obviously score yours while stopping them scoring theirs. And I think it's a similar style to Orc Pressure, but potentially a bit more stand back and almost hold your opponent's forehead as they try and come forward while they swing at you, and you just like, no, thank you. I think there's going to be a bit of that. That's going to be the style. But having that board control is going to be really important. I think that there's a bit of castle play in here as well, because we've got loads of overlapping buffs, and I think some of them are really cool, right? We've got the Venom Throp's the one that stands out, gone up massively to 140 points, but they are giving you a +1 to your armor save in a indirect world where people are going to shoot all your Hormigans and Termagants and Nuragants and all sorts of things. They're going to shoot them out of line of sight. If you can give them +1 to your armor save, that's pretty strong. And the -1 to hit, obviously, which doesn't affect monsters now. But, a lot of these overlapping things are pretty good. And then, of course, Synapse is really important. You're already going to want to be quite huddled up. So I think that castle player leans in well to this. Maybe even multiple mini castles. Forts, if you will. We just shove a fort forward, keep 2 forts back. However you want to do it. And then in terms of how we would play, I think I lean close, depending on how maps turn out, right? Obviously, I play in the UK, so it's going to be heavy UKTC focus. But if it stays the way it is, hiding your infantry is going to be super important. Reserving monsters, I think, is going to be key. It's going to be a shooting meta, guys. This is what everyone's saying. There's going to be loads of guns, and they're all going to point at your monsters that you can't hide. So having them in reserve and then coming in via rapid ingress is probably the best way to deal with it. Of course, you are giving your opponent the agency, which I've mentioned before, but it's going to be tough. The only other way you can do monsters and just kind of, and it makes me nervous to do this, but if you have all the monsters, you put them on the line and you run forward, and then hopefully they don't have enough guns to kill you all. That's a play style I can't do, because I am totally worried about my opponent just wiping them out and then the game being over by turn 3. So there's different ways to skin a cat. For me, I'm a bit more of a sneaky player. I'm probably an Eldari player at heart, maybe. And hiding your infantry, being able to come out of corners, sneak up, stage, etc., is where I think I'll be. In terms of threats, as I just mentioned, the monsters in a shooting meta look pretty rough, in my opinion. Obviously, as we said before, the APs are very different now, but still, there's a lot of damage out there. There's a lot of damage out there, and it's coming for your monsters. Monsters also tend to have sub 5 OC. So what does that mean, right? That means that they can't hold objectives on their own. If they've gone into your opponent, if you go into the mid board and your opponent has 5 dudes that all have 1 OC, they're just going to, a minimum squad size, just going to stand on that objective and say, well, this is mine now, and your monster can't heroic. So I guess we're just going to stand here and look at each other, and you lose the points. So if you are going to move a monster up the table, you really do have to have some chaff with them to make up the numbers, to maybe even move block, and I think there's going to be a lot of skill expression with that. I think that's going to be really cool. Last, but of course not least, we have very little protection against mortal wounds. That's going to come up at some point, so be aware for that. Hopefully it all gets nerfed into the ground and it'll be lovely. So yeah, that's kind of where we're looking at in terms of SWOT analysis. Let's look at some actual, ladies and gentlemen, graphs. So let's talk about speed first. So in speed, we were spotting 9th. Most things are a little bit slower now. So what I've done here is on the vertical axis, you can see the number of units that apply. And on the bottom, you've got the movement value. So you can see that we have a couple of units that pretty bang average. Obviously, big 0 here for the Spore Assist. Can't wait to see that on the battlefield. It's not even bad. Anyway, I'm not talking units. Just get excited. If you think the Spore Assist is good, put a thumbs up in chat. So then we get to like movement 6, which is where most of our infantry lives. So we've got quite a significant amount. And then we get up to 8, where most of our monsters, gene stealers, live. After that, it's pretty limited to things that are flying, but also things that can't really impact the game. Oh, Dave, a winged hive tyrant can impact the game. Yeah, sure it can. But are you going to take it? Probably. I mean, I don't see myself taking a winged hive tyrant. Again, something else I'll probably regret saying later down the line. I think the winged prime is pretty awful. Gargoyles are great, but they're not going to, murder anything. And the parasite, of course, is definitely took a bit of a nerf and definitely not going to be on top of my shopping list when I'm list writing. I think Raveners going down, really hurts because Raveners are pretty good in this. If they still had movement 12, I'd really be into them. I still think you need probably a squad just to kind of be able to move around. You do have Hormigans that can advance and charge, of course, so that's a big that's a big move. But it's still not as fast as we were. Still not as fast as we were. So something to watch out for. We're not as fast as we were. So there's going to be a lot more staging, a lot more making sure that you're not dead before you even get into combat. A lot more taking care of the models you have, rather than that movement cashing you out or saving you from an error, if you know what I mean. We've all been there where you've misdeployed and you're like, oh God, if I was just 3 inches further forward, that's going to be something we need to watch out for. Okay, so that's speed. Let's look at, are we killy? Is killy something you can associate with Tyranids? I think this is super interesting. So we struggle with high toughness. For example, if we were to play a mirror game, it would be a big pillow fight. And this is again without the high progression. Take that out the picture for a second. On this graph here, you've got the grey, which is melee attacks, and the orange, which is ranged attacks. So obviously range attacks we're a bit more limited in. We were a 3-phase army, or an every phase army. Now we're kind of a 1-phase army with a bit of shooting sprinkled in there on top. And you can see here the warriors, Von Ryans and Raveners kind of sit in the strength 5. We've got a lot of strength 5 shooting. Then we get to 7. We've got a lot of monsters, especially monsters and lictors in combat, but not a lot in shooting, and shooting very much collapses, right? We don't have high-powered shooting anymore. The days of the heavy venom cannon. I'm going to a GT tomorrow. I'm taking 5 Carnifexes, and they've all got heavy venom cannons, and they're all Leviathans, so they're doing the reroll. Reliable, high-powered shooting. You can scrumple that up, chuck it out the window, because we don't have it now. What you do have though is a bit more combat at that level, and then a little bit when it gets to like this crazy world of strength 14 and 12 and what have you. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle. Of course, the high progression is going to be good for this. It's going to really make up for it. And of course, we have 18 different sources of twin linked, which is awesome. That's really cool. When it comes down to wounding things on 5s, rerolls are really, really powerful for that. Now, if we were to play a mirror match, for example, let's look at how our toughness is, how toughness looks. So we've got a lot of toughness 5 and we've got a lot of toughness 9. So you've got all these weapons. Look how many toughness strength 9 weapons we have. Look how many different toughness 9 monsters we have. We're just going to be running into each other and wounding each other on 5s, right? It's going to be real rough. Of course, it just means you have to take that high progression. That's the key message of this slide, really. The high progression is really important to making an impact in these games. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle. A knight matchup is a nightmare, honestly, without that ability to buy them off. All right, cool. So that's Killy there. So I've looked at a few different bits here as well. We've got, we have all these melee attack profiles are really, really suited to go into chaffs and elite. So as I said, we've got a lot. If you look here, we've got a lot of strength 8. That's amazing into your elite infantry. We've got a lot of strength 5. That's great into your chaff. So what I've got on the left-hand side, you've got the strength of the attack and the average, the number of attacks per average unit size. So the minimum unit size, so to speak. You can't see it here, but Gene Stealers and Hormigans are like way across on the left. They were so far away, I just took them off because they're well over here somewhere, well over the far right. And that's just because they've got so many attacks. When we look at other units here, you can see that we, you've got a lot of attacks from different units, but the strength definitely kind of drops off. You've got all One Eye who's absolutely carrying the strength of attacks, but it goes really far down. You've got the Screamer doing a little bit. The Morlock is a surprise inclusion in this as well, in terms of being pretty strong. But overall, we don't have a great deal of things that can deal with tanks and monsters, etc. So what I've done as well is, when dealing with high toughness, it's our fast melee that actually really benefits from that high progression. So you started the game, you said, right, I know your boy SwiSSly said to me, we can't fight tanks, so we have to take high progression. Which units really benefit from high progression? Attack, and what I've done is I've looked at attacks per unit point cost, and Hormigans are amazing at this, right? They've got so many attacks each, and they just fly in. They're 140 points for 20, 70 for 10. So really, really nice. And then after that, there's a bit of a drop off to Raveners, but then it steadily goes down to essentially where you fight Tyrannid warriors. And then after that, these units are not as efficient with that ability. So if I'm building that, if I'm building my lists, I'm definitely including Hormigans and Gene Stealers. As we said before, they've got the most attacks. They've got the ability to wound an opponent and get through to the armor save. But they've also got the best way of benefiting from that. Sixes do the lethal wounds. Yeah, and again, just to touch on this as well, GW are really pushing us towards the swamps. They want us to take loads of models, guys, to take them. What we got here, the Haruspecs being 125 points with strength 4, with 4 strength 14 attacks is quite good. It is, and there's a Harris, and 125 points is pretty strong. Oh, the sausage one's got something you shouldn't have. It is good, but then it's got movement 8, and it's getting shot all the way through. It's not got an invuln. You can back it up with some zone throw-ups and a psychophage, make it a little bit more durable, but that thing's getting shot. So I think they come in twos, if I'm honest, and you shove them both down your opponent's throat immediately. But we'll see. All right. The Haruspecs actually lands pretty high up here. In fact, it's the biggest monster. So points per attack, Haruspecs, pretty good. Okay, moving on to something else. Are we durable? Are we an army that has a bit of durability about us? The answer is yeah, guys. The answer is yeah. Math says so. So monsters can provide a significant amount of beef for your opponent to chew through. So these are units by wounds. This is how many units we have at certain wounds values. So 14 is pretty high, 10 is pretty high, even 16 over there, which is really nice. We do have a lot of 3 as well, which I don't think a lot of other armies are going to have that kind of level of wounds. So I think overall we're pretty beefy. So we've got 15 beefy boys from toughness 10 and above. That's really strong, and I think we should be pretty chuffed with that. Of course, if they do manage to get through that high toughness, our saves aren't shabby either, in a world where AP2 is considered good. Do you remember Raveners having AP4? I think they've got AP0 now, right? Like, that's the world we're living in now. There's no AP or less AP. So we've got a lot. This is the units by their save and by their invulns. So we've got a lot of units at 2 up, a significant amount of 3 up. So, and then 4, 5, this is your chaff area around here. We've even got a couple of invulns in here at 4. I don't know where the three comes in, but I don't think it's there. 5s and 6s as well. So, overall, it's pretty strong. And even these units that have 3 up armor, 4 up armor, we can even give them +1 to their armor save, even monsters with our good friends, the Venom throw-ups. We can even give them a 6 up plus, a 6++ save from a zone throw-up. We can even give them a 6++ save with a psychophage. So overall, guys, we've got some durable stuff. Don't get me wrong, they're not the best buffs in the world, but I bet you they do come in handy after a while. Of course, we also have that stratagem, the fake catalyst stratagem, where you can get a feel no pain on 1, potentially 2 units in synapse range, which is super strong. All right, so overall that's good. So what I've done here is look at points per wound. So how do you get the most wounds in your army to make it as difficult as possible for your opponent to table you? And unsurprisingly, non-invuln units offer the best points per wound ratio. These units can easily access buffs as well, like I've just said. So interestingly, Rippers are the most efficient points per wound ratio. So just take loads of Rippers, see if your opponent can table you. Neurogaunts obviously do very well as well because they're cheapest chips. And then afterwards, we get to more serious things. even barbed gaunts, termagants, hormagaunts. Now they are cheap. They're about 10 wounds in a squad of 10. So of course they're going to be very efficient, but they don't have an invuln, right? They're easier to kill. It's that quality of wound piece. They're not easily saved wounds. We compare that to things like with invulns. So we've got all the Swarm Lords, all the Hive Tyrants down here with their 4-up invulns. In the middle, you've got your 5-up invulns. And then over here, you've got your 6-ups with the Von Ryans. So it's really interesting that they are obviously more expensive. They're paying for that invuln. We can give all this chaff, all those buffs, like I said before. 6-up Feel No Pain, 6-up invuln. However, a consideration is for these units here. How safe is that high toughness that we talked about before against some of these really amazing shooting armies? They're high toughness, they're good save, but without Feel No Pain, damage reduction, or invuln in this shooty meta that's coming up. If you've filled your armies full of screamers, are they susceptible to just being shot off the board? Because they don't have that invuln to protect them. Carnifex is all one eye, like we said before. I agree, Chris, that it's an awesome combo, but it's, it makes me nervous, man. It makes me nervous. Toxicrines, crazily, weirdly good, but you'd never take one because you can't get it through a wall, can't get it through a gap in a bloody building. The Trigon, again, sounds amazing, but it's just a real struggle. Like if it just lands in a position where some melters can see it, or las cannons, which are decent now, like it's going to be rough. And then of course the Tervigan, rip the Tervigan. I think it's 200 points now. That's a lot of points for something that doesn't get bodyguard from termagants anymore. And you know, you don't want it hiding. You want it out fighting stuff, right? You want to move it up the board. That's why it's good. Get obnoxious, start like taking objectives from the middle. But it will die. That's the problem. So that's my take on that. And that's the three kind of segments I really want to talk about today. I'm going to be talking about next week. We're going to be looking at units. We're going to be looking at different strategies, but I want to get a few games under my belts first. So I'm bringing you stuff that I can point at and go, I did this and it was great, or I did this and it was terrible. I think you may be underestimating invulns with monsters being able to get cover really easy and lower AP all around. Yeah, you know what? Potentially. But it does worry me. Maybe it's the 9th edition crawling up the back of my neck, making me nervous and making me paranoid. But I just think it's a risk. It's a risk that I wouldn't want to take myself. I think the Tyranny playstyle is going to be overwhelm your opponents. I think that's going to be what we try and do. But that gives them a lot of agency to go, oh, you're going to overwhelm me? Actually, I'm kind of underwhelmed. I'm going to murder you. And that does make me a bit nervous. Of course, any questions, any comments, I'd love to hear them. Me and Ed are going to be on here in about half an hour, 45 minutes. I think I need to check with Ed actually as to what time we're starting. But we're going to be talking about all different units and all different points costs. And that'll be really fun. I know he's a very, very excited about Eldar. Very excited about Eldar. I've seen that I think Chris Tull, captain of 6++, no less, posted a picture of a Wraith Knight ready to go. That's terrifying. I think I looked at how many points it was, or so they posted it in the chat. It is ridiculous. It's so cheap, so cheap. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, cool. If there's no questions, guys, hit me up in the Discord. Please join our Discord, the 6++ Discord. We have a little bug watch area where we can all talk about Tyranids and get the best new lists. I recommend joining the Tyrannid Discord as well. It's very good. And there's a couple of people in there. Big shout out to Corkin, who I always like his opinions on things. They're always pretty strong. And of course, stick around for later because we've got another show later on. Cool. I will catch you guys there. Have a good one.